October 23, 1992, 4:47 a.m. 12 armed men moved through the pre-dawn darkness toward a farmhouse outside Medellín, where intelligence said Pablo Escobar was sleeping, and Diego Murillo, the team leader, was starting to realize they'd walked into something wrong. The crickets had stopped chirping about 60 meters back. The dogs that should have been barking at the perimeter were silent. His radio crackled with static that hadn't been there during the approach, like someone was jamming frequencies. Behind him, 11 Los Pepes sicarios carried enough firepower to level the farmhouse: assault rifles, grenades, RPGs, ammunition belts that clinked softly with each step. They'd been promised 50,000 each if they killed Pablo, plus protection from the Cali Cartel and the Colombian government, easy money for experienced killers. But Diego's instincts, honed through 43 successful hits over 8 years, were screaming at him that the silence was too complete, the approach too easy, the farmhouse too dark and still. He stopped walking, raised his fist to halt the team, and that's when the first explosion tore through the pre-dawn darkness, taking out 3 men instantly. Then the gunfire started from positions Diego couldn't see, muzzle flashes erupting from the tree line on 3 sides, and Diego understood with absolute clarity. They weren't hunting Pablo Escobar. They were the bait. The question nobody would ever answer: did Pablo know Los Pepes was sending a hit team that night, or had he prepared every safehouse like this, waiting for whichever group finally took the job? Los Pepes, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar, formed in January 1993 as a death squad with one purpose: kill Pablo before Pablo killed them and everyone they loved. By late 1992, Pablo was waging total war against anyone who opposed him. He'd bombed government buildings, assassinated politicians, killed police officers by the hundreds. His sicarios were hunting former associates who'd betrayed him, killing their families, burning their businesses. The violence had become so extreme that even Colombia's criminal underworld wanted him dead, not for moral reasons, but because Pablo was destroying the infrastructure everyone else depended on. Los Pepes was funded by the Cali Cartel, supported quietly by elements of Colombian security forces, and staffed by people who'd lost family to Pablo's violence. They had money, weapons, intelligence from the search block hunting Pablo, and absolute motivation. Between January and October 1992, Los Pepes killed over 300 people connected to Pablo: family members, lawyers, business associates, anyone who might help him. But they hadn't killed Pablo himself. Every attempt failed. Car bombs defused, snipers shot before taking their shots, ambushes that hit empty vehicles while Pablo escaped. By October, Los Pepes' leadership was desperate. They needed a win, something that proved Pablo could be touched. That's when intelligence came through the search block. Pablo was using a farmhouse outside Medellín, rotating between it and other safehouses every few days. The farmhouse had minimal security, just 4 bodyguards. If Los Pepes moved fast with overwhelming force, they could end it. Diego Murillo was chosen to lead the assault team. He'd worked for the Cali Cartel for 8 years, had survived multiple battles with Pablo's sicarios, knew Medellín's terrain. Los Pepes gave him 11 men, all experienced, all motivated by personal revenge against Pablo. They equipped the team with military-grade weapons. They provided the intelligence. They promised massive payouts. What Los Pepes didn't know, what Diego didn't know, was that the intelligence had been planted, not by accident, not through incompetence, but deliberately by someone in Pablo's network who'd infiltrated the search block specifically to feed false information to Los Pepes. Diego Murillo and his team left Medellín at 3:30 a.m. on October 23rd, and within 20 minutes, Diego noticed things that bothered him. The intelligence said the farmhouse was on a rural road with minimal traffic. True. It said there'd be a perimeter with dogs and basic security. Also true. Diego could see the fence line, the guard posts. But what bothered him was how visible everything was. Security that obvious meant either incompetence or invitation. Pablo's people weren't incompetent. Diego had done 43 hits in his career. He'd learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts were telling him this felt staged, too clean, too easy. When they parked the vehicles a kilometer from the farmhouse and started their approach on foot, Diego noticed the crickets stopped chirping. Environmental detail could mean nothing. could mean people were already positioned in the trees and wildlife had gone quiet. "You feel that?" Diego whispered to his second in command, a sicario named Rodrigo. "Feel what? It's too quiet?" Rodrigo shrugged. "It's 4 a.m. Everything's quiet." But Diego had operated at 4 a.m. dozens of times. There was normal quiet, and there was wrong quiet. This was wrong quiet. He considered aborting, pulling the team back, reporting to Los Pepes leadership that the situation felt compromised. But then he thought about the $50,000, about the families Los Pepes had promised to protect, about how backing out without engaging would look like cowardice. At 4:45 a.m., they reached the farmhouse perimeter. Still no alarms, no dogs barking, no movement. The lights were off. Diego signaled the team to spread out, surround the structure. 6 men would breach through the front and rear simultaneously. 3 would provide covering fire. 2 would watch the flanks. Diego would command from center position. They moved into position. Diego raised his hand, counting down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. That's when the Claymore mine detonated. The first explosion killed 3 men instantly, the ones closest to what they thought was the farmhouse entrance, but was actually a pressure-triggered mine. Before Diego could process what happened, gunfire erupted from the tree line. Not random shooting, coordinated, overlapping fields of fire from elevated positions, professional military tactics. Diego's team was caught in a kill box, a predetermined area where every angle was covered, every escape route anticipated. 2 more men went down in the first 5 seconds. Diego dove behind a water trough, his radio useless from the jamming, his ears ringing from the explosion. He could see muzzle flashes in the trees, at least 8 positions, maybe more. His team was firing back, but they were exposed, panicked, caught completely off guard. This wasn't a firefight. It was an execution. Through the chaos, Diego saw Rodrigo get hit. Center mass went down hard, saw another sicario try to run back toward the vehicles and get cut down. Before he made 10 meters, the farmhouse itself was dark, empty. Pablo wasn't there, had never been there. This whole location was a trap, and Los Pepes had walked 12 men straight into it. Some people claim Pablo personally commanded the ambush from a nearby position, that he watched through night vision as Los Pepes' team got massacred. Others say Pablo was miles away, that he'd trained his security teams to prepare these kill boxes at every safe house, and this was just one of many. The evidence supports both. Pablo was paranoid enough to prepare traps everywhere and egotistical enough to want to watch his enemies die. Diego made a decision in that moment that probably saved his life. He stopped trying to fight and started trying to survive. He crawled away from the water trough during a lull in firing, moved into deeper darkness, abandoned his rifle to move faster and quieter. Behind him, his team was being systematically eliminated. He could hear the gunfire becoming more sporadic. Fewer return shots, more screams, then silence. Diego Murillo survived the ambush because he did something none of the other 11 men did. He surrendered. He was crawling through undergrowth about 40 meters from the kill zone when a flashlight beam found him. Pablo's sicarios emerged from the darkness, 3 of them, rifles aimed at Diego's head. Diego immediately dropped flat, put his hands on his head, and said the only thing that might keep him alive. "I have information about Los Pepes, leadership names, locations. I'll trade it for my life." One of the sicarios laughed. "Pablo doesn't negotiate with dead men." "Then kill me," Diego replied, staying perfectly still. "But you'll miss the chance to know who in the search block is feeding Los Pepes intelligence. I know names, badge numbers, meeting locations." The sicarios looked at each other. This wasn't a decision they could make. They zip-tied Diego's hands, put a hood over his head, and dragged him toward a vehicle. Behind them, the farmhouse area had gone completely silent except for someone. Diego assumed it was Pablo's cleanup crew, moving through the bodies. Diego was driven for approximately 30 minutes, based on his count. When the hood came off, he was in a warehouse basement, tied to a chair, and Pablo Escobar was sitting across from him. Some historians question whether this meeting actually happened, whether Pablo would have personally interrogated a captured Los Pepes sicario, or would have delegated it. But Diego's later testimony to Colombian authorities included details about the warehouse, about Pablo's appearance that night, about specific things Pablo said that aligned with what was known about Pablo's psychology in late 1992. Pablo looked at Diego for a long time without speaking. Then he said something that revealed how deeply he understood his enemies. "You're not with Los Pepes because you hate me. You're with them because Cali pays better than I do. So let's talk about payment." Diego Murillo gave Pablo Escobar everything Los Pepes didn't want him to know, and in exchange, he got something nobody expected: employment. Over the next 2 hours, Diego provided names of Los Pepes leadership, locations of safehouses, the structure of how Cali Cartel funding flowed to the death squad. He identified which search block officers were cooperating with Los Pepes. He detailed the intelligence networks Los Pepes used. He held nothing back because he understood that partial cooperation was the same as no cooperation. It would just get him tortured before being killed. Pablo listened, occasionally asking questions, having his people verify details through phone calls. By dawn, Pablo had enough information to severely damage Los Pepes' operations. But instead of killing Diego as expected, Pablo made an offer. "You work for me now, not because I trust you, I don't, but because you're pragmatic. You sided with Los Pepes when they seemed stronger. Now I'm stronger. You'll side with me until someone stronger appears. I understand men like you. You're useful." Some people argue Pablo was being naive, that keeping a Los Pepes sicario alive was asking to be betrayed again. Others claim Pablo was being strategic. Diego's betrayal of Los Pepes would demoralize them, create paranoia about who else might flip, and demonstrate that Pablo could turn even his enemies. Diego worked for Pablo for approximately 7 months, from October 1992 until Pablo's death in December 1993. During that time, Diego provided intelligence that led to several Los Pepes members being killed. After Pablo died, Diego disappeared, some say to Brazil, others claim Spain. He surfaced briefly in 2005 to give testimony to Colombian prosecutors investigating Los Pepes' activities, then vanished again. The 11 men who died in that farmhouse ambush on October 23, 1992, became a message Pablo Escobar sent to everyone hunting him. Los Pepes found the bodies 2 days later. Pablo's people had left them arranged in a line, face down, each with a single gunshot wound to the back of the head, execution style, even though most had died during the firefight. The staging was intentional. Pablo was saying, "I didn't just kill you in a battle, I executed you. I had time after the fighting stopped to arrange your bodies, to make a statement, and nobody came to help you." The bodies were also stripped of identification, weapons, and communication equipment. Everything useful to Los Pepes' operations was gone. Pablo's intelligence people would have gone through phones, radios, documents, extracting every piece of information before returning the corpses. Los Pepes tried to spin the massacre as evidence that Pablo was desperate, that he needed elaborate traps because he couldn't fight directly. But everyone in Colombia's underworld understood what it really meant. Pablo's intelligence network was good enough to feed false information through the search block. His security teams were disciplined enough to prepare kill boxes at multiple locations, and Los Pepes' advantage in funding and personnel hadn't mattered when it counted. The October 23rd ambush marked a turning point in Los Pepes' strategy. They stopped sending large assault teams after Pablo directly. Instead, they focused on his support network, killing his family members, destroying his properties, targeting his money. These tactics eventually contributed to Pablo's isolation and death, but the farmhouse massacre taught Los Pepes that conventional military operations against Pablo's prepared positions were suicide. The story of 12 men entering that farmhouse and only one surviving isn't about Pablo's brutality. It's about what happens when paranoia becomes a functional strategy. Pablo spent his final years preparing for betrayal from every direction. He assumed every location was compromised, every person was a potential informant, every piece of intelligence was possibly planted. That paranoia made him isolate himself from family, alienate allies, and ultimately contributed to his death in December 1993, when he was caught with minimal security. But before that paranoia killed him, it kept him alive for years, beyond when he should have died. The farmhouse trap worked because Pablo, or his security chief, had assumed someone would eventually get that location, had prepared accordingly, and had positioned it as bait. Diego Murillo's team wasn't unlucky. They were walking into a system designed to kill anyone who came looking. Some historians argue this level of preparation is evidence of Pablo's strategic genius. Others claim it's evidence of unsustainable paranoia that eventually collapsed. Both are true. Pablo survived longer than anyone expected by treating everyone as an enemy. But you can't fight everyone forever. Eventually, the isolation catches up. Diego Murillo survived by being the one person who understood the game had changed, that he wasn't there to kill Pablo, he was there to be killed, and the only winning move was to switch sides before the trap fully closed. That pragmatism, that willingness to betray whoever needed betraying to stay alive, is what saved him when 11 other men died. The story of Los Pepes sending 12 men to kill Pablo Escobar and only one walking out became a legend about preparation, paranoia, and what happens when you hunt someone who's been hunted so many times they've turned every safe location into a weapon. Pablo died 14 months after that farmhouse ambush, killed by search block on a Medellín rooftop. But on October 23, 1992, he proved one more time that killing him wasn't about having more men or better weapons. It was about being willing to accept the kind of casualties nobody was prepared for. Next week, we're covering the day Pablo Escobar surrendered to Colombian authorities and built a prison designed exactly how he wanted it. The prison he'd eventually escaped from, starting the manhunt that ended his life. Drop a comment. Do you think Diego was smart to flip sides, or was he a coward who betrayed his team? Let me know what you think. And remember, sometimes the difference between dying with your team and surviving alone is knowing when the mission was never real in the first place.